In a room full of soldiers, no one noticed the quiet young woman in the corner until the device hidden in her bag exposed a secret so classified it could shatter the entire US mission. The air conditioning hummed against the Colorado heat, while fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the conference room. Among the 37 personnel present, most were familiar faces, seasoned sergeants, young privates, and support staff. But tucked in the back corner sat someone who didn't quite fit the mold. Sarah Chen appeared to be in her mid-20s, wearing civilian clothes that looked more suited for a college campus than a military installation. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she clutched a worn canvas messenger bag against her chest. The soldiers barely glanced her way, assuming she was another contractor's daughter or perhaps an intern from the Defense Department. Her presence seemed so unremarkable that most had already forgotten she was there. But what they didn't know was that this seemingly ordinary young woman carried secrets that could reshape everything they thought they understood about their mission. Sarah had arrived at Fort Carson 3 days earlier under the cover story of a logistics audit. Her paperwork indicated she was Rebecca Martinez, a civilian analyst from the Pentagon's Administrative Services Division. The guards at the main gate had waved her through without a second glance, her credentials appearing legitimate in every database they could access. She had spent those 3 days observing, taking notes, and blending seamlessly into the background noise of military bureaucracy. The soldiers treated her with polite indifference, the kind reserved for civilians, who wandered through their world without truly understanding it. Some offered her coffee, others held doors, but none suspected that beneath her unremarkable exterior lay years of specialized training. Her mission parameters were crystal clear: infiltrate, observe, and extract specific intelligence about Operation Blackwater without raising any suspicion. For 72 hours, everything had proceeded according to plan. But sometimes, even the most carefully orchestrated operations can unravel in the span of a single heartbeat when gravity claims an unexpected victim. Colonel Matthews was midway through discussing quarterly maintenance schedules when Sarah shifted in her seat. The morning heat was beginning to make the room stuffy, and she unconsciously loosened her grip on the messenger bag. She reached for the water bottle beside her chair, a simple movement she had performed thousands of times before. But as her arm extended, the canvas strap slipped from her shoulder with unexpected suddenness. Time seemed to slow as the bag tumbled toward the linoleum floor, its zipper partially open from the morning's security checkpoint. Sarah's eyes widened in horror as she realized what was about to happen, her hand shooting out desperately to catch the falling bag. But gravity had already claimed its prize. The messenger bag struck the floor with a dull thud that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent room. And from its open mouth, a single object rolled across the polished surface, coming to rest directly in the center of the assembled soldiers' field of vision. The room fell into a silence so complete that the humming of the air conditioning suddenly seemed deafening as 37 pairs of eyes locked onto something they were never supposed to see. Lying there on the conference room floor was a communications device unlike anything most of them had ever seen. The unit was matte black, roughly the size of a deck of cards, with no visible branding or model numbers. Its surface was marked only by a series of small LED indicators and what appeared to be a biometric scanner. But it was the small insignia, etched into the device's corner, that made several senior officers suck in their breath sharply. The symbol was unmistakable to anyone with the appropriate clearance level, a stylized eagle with wings spread over a globe, surrounded by 13 stars. It was the classified marking of the Defense Intelligence Agency's Special Activities Division, a unit so secret that most of the soldiers in that room weren't even supposed to know it existed. This wasn't just any communication device. It was a Sabre unit, used exclusively by deep-cover operatives conducting the most sensitive missions imaginable. Colonel Matthews, a veteran of 23 years and holder of a top-secret clearance, felt his throat go dry. He recognized the Sabre unit from classified briefings he'd attended at the Pentagon, meetings where he'd been sworn to secrecy under threat of court-martial. Sarah's face had gone pale, but her training kicked in before panic could take hold. In one fluid motion, she dropped to her knees and scooped up the device, but the damage was already done. Every person in that room had seen it, and those with sufficient knowledge understood exactly what it meant. Master Sergeant Rodriguez, who had spent 8 years in Army intelligence before transferring to Fort Carson, found himself unconsciously straightening his posture as he stared at the young woman. The device she had just retrieved wasn't something that could be purchased, stolen, or counterfeited. It was issued only to operatives who had undergone years of specialized training and psychological evaluation. Its very existence in this room meant that their seemingly harmless civilian visitor was, in fact, one of the most highly classified individuals in the entire U.S. military intelligence apparatus. The implications were staggering, and everyone present understood that they had just witnessed something they were never supposed to see. The seconds stretched like hours as Sarah clutched the device against her chest, her mind racing through contingency protocols she had hoped never to use. Colonel Matthews was the first to break the oppressive silence, his voice barely above a whisper, as he asked the question that everyone was thinking. "Ma'am, I need to ask you to identify yourself properly." Sarah's jaw tightened as she realized there was no path back to her original mission parameters. The Sabre unit in her hands represented not just her connection to the Special Activities Division, but access to intelligence networks that reached into the highest levels of government. She had spent 3 years building her cover as Rebecca Martinez, creating a paper trail that would withstand casual scrutiny while allowing her to move freely through military installations. But now, faced with 24 witnesses who understood the significance of what they had just seen, she found herself at a crossroads that would determine not just the fate of her mission, but potentially the lives of everyone in that room. Because the truth about who she really was and why she was at Fort Carson was far more dangerous than anyone could imagine. The weight of operational necessity settled on her shoulders like a lead blanket as she prepared to cross the final line. "Clear the room," Colonel Matthews ordered, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded men in combat. Everyone except senior staff, security clearance level 3 and above. The junior soldiers and support staff began filing out, their faces reflecting confusion and concern. They understood they had witnessed something significant, but the full implications were beyond their need to know. As the room emptied to just 8 individuals, Sarah felt the gravity of the moment. Master Sergeant Rodriguez positioned himself by the door, ensuring their conversation would remain private. Captain Williams, the base intelligence officer, activated a white noise generator that would defeat any electronic surveillance. The remaining personnel, all veterans with extensive experience in classified operations, formed a loose semicircle around Sarah, their expressions serious but patient. But they understood that whatever was about to be revealed would fundamentally change their understanding of their mission, their base, and possibly their careers. Sarah took a deep breath and made the decision that would transform her from a shadow operative into something far more dangerous, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to protect. "My name is Sarah Chen," she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. "I'm a senior case officer with the Defense Intelligence Agency's Special Activities Division, operating under Presidential Finding 2024-07. The reference to the Presidential Finding, a classified authorization that allowed for covert operations on American soil, sent a visible shock through the assembled officers. Such findings were extremely rare and indicated operations of the highest national security priority. For the past 96 hours, I have been conducting a counterintelligence operation targeting a suspected foreign intelligence asset operating within this installation." She held up the Sabre unit, its LED indicators now glowing softly in the dimmed conference room lighting. This device contains evidence that someone in your chain of command has been providing classified information to hostile foreign intelligence services. The leak has been ongoing for at least 8 months and has already compromised ongoing operations in Eastern Europe and the Pacific Theater. The officers exchanged glances, understanding that they were now part of something that could reshape the entire structure of their command. The revelation hit the room like a physical force, and Sarah could see the implications registering in each officer's expression. Captain Williams was the first to speak, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You're telling us we have a traitor in our ranks?" Sarah nodded grimly, her fingers working across the Sabre unit's interface to display encrypted data that made several officers lean forward despite themselves. "The evidence is conclusive. Financial records show payments from shell companies linked to foreign intelligence services. Communication intercepts reveal coded messages being transmitted during scheduled exercises. Most damning of all, classified documents that should never have left secure storage have been photographed and transmitted to handlers operating out of a diplomatic facility in Washington." She paused, allowing the weight of the accusation to settle before delivering the final piece of intelligence that would change everything. The individual responsible for this betrayal is someone with direct access to Operation Blackwater's most sensitive components. Someone trusted with information that could get American soldiers killed if it falls into the wrong hands. And based on the evidence I've gathered over the past 3 days, that person is sitting in this room right now. The accusation hung in the air like a live grenade with a pulled pin, and Sarah could see each officer mentally reviewing their colleagues, searching for signs they might have missed. Master Sergeant Rodriguez unconsciously moved closer to the door, his training telling him to secure the area against potential escape attempts. The Sabre unit in Sarah's hands began emitting a barely audible vibration, indicating that it had detected electronic surveillance equipment somewhere in the immediate vicinity. Sarah activated a display function on the device, projecting encrypted data onto the conference room's wall that made Captain Williams curse under his breath. The information was devastating in its scope and precision, revealing not just the existence of the leak, but its systematic nature and growing boldness. Bank account numbers, meeting locations, code phrases, and most damning of all, photographs of classified documents being transmitted via encrypted channels to foreign handlers. But it was the final piece of evidence that caused Colonel Matthews to sink heavily into his chair, his face pale with the recognition of what he was seeing. Because there, displayed in high-resolution clarity, was a photograph of the suspect's hands placing classified documents into a scanning device. The conference room door opened with mechanical precision, and Major David Harrison stepped inside. With the casual confidence of someone who belonged there, he was exactly as Sarah's intelligence files had described: 42 years old, 15 years of distinguished military service, a Bronze Star recipient who had earned the respect and trust of everyone under his command. His appearance was unremarkable in the way that made him perfect for intelligence work. Average height, brown hair, showing the first traces of gray, and the kind of face that people forgot 5 minutes after meeting him. But Sarah's trained eye immediately noted the subtle signs that indicated he was prepared for violence. His right hand rested casually near his service weapon. His body language suggested coiled tension despite his relaxed expression, and his eyes were conducting a tactical assessment of everyone present in the room. "Sorry I'm late," he said with practiced ease, completely ignoring the wall display that was still showing evidence of his treachery. He moved toward an empty chair, as if nothing unusual was happening, but Sarah could see that he was positioning himself to have clear sightlines to everyone in the room, while keeping his back protected. The tension in the room became almost physically oppressive as Sarah realized that Major Harrison's casual demeanor was nothing more than a predator's patience before striking. Colonel Matthews, displaying the leadership qualities that had earned him his rank, spoke with careful authority. "Major Harrison, we need to discuss some irregularities that have come to our attention regarding classified information security." Harrison's expression didn't change, but Sarah noticed his pupils dilate slightly, a physiological response that indicated his sympathetic nervous system was preparing for combat. "Of course, sir," he replied smoothly. "I'm always happy to assist with security reviews. What specific concerns are we addressing?" His voice carried just the right note of professional curiosity, but Sarah could detect the underlying calculation as he assessed threats and escape routes. What happened next unfolded with terrible clarity. Sarah's finger moved to the saber. "Unit's emergency transmission function, preparing to send a burst communication that would alert DIA backup assets to the developing situation." But Harrison, whose own intelligence training had taught him to recognize the signs of operational compromise, moved with fluid precision toward his service weapon. The room erupted into controlled chaos as every officer present drew their weapons, creating a standoff that could end in devastating violence for everyone involved. But Sarah, whose training had prepared her for exactly this scenario, made a decision that would determine whether the next few seconds ended in bloodshed or resolution. Instead of reaching for her own weapon, she held up the saber unit and spoke words that stopped everyone dead in their tracks. "Major Harrison, the evidence we have includes not just your financial records and communication intercepts, but real-time footage of you meeting with your handler yesterday evening at the Marriott in Colorado Springs. We know about the documents you photographed, the codes you transmitted, and the identity of every asset you've compromised. Most importantly, we know about the kill order you received this morning." The revelation hit Harrison like a physical blow, and for the first time since entering the room, his composure cracked completely. The kill order Sarah mentioned wasn't just authorization to eliminate threats to his operation. It was a death sentence for everyone present, including him. "The kill team your handlers dispatched is currently 12 minutes out from this location," Sarah continued, her voice carrying the cold authority of someone who held all the cards in a deadly game. "But they don't know that we've been tracking their communications for the past 6 weeks, or that their extraction route has been compromised by assets you were never told about. You have exactly one chance to survive the next hour, Major, and that chance depends entirely on your willingness to cooperate with the deception operation that will save not just your life, but the lives of the 12 American operatives your intelligence has already endangered." The offer hung in the air like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man, and Harrison's tactical mind immediately began calculating odds and possibilities. His handlers had made it clear that his exposure would result in immediate termination, both of his usefulness and his life. But Sarah was offering something his foreign controllers never could, a path to survival that didn't require him to keep running for the rest of his life. Colonel Matthews made the decision that would determine how the next hour unfolded. "Major Harrison, you have 30 seconds to decide whether you want to face a military tribunal or a foreign assassin's bullet." Harrison's weapon slowly moved away from its target position as the full reality of his situation became clear. The foreign intelligence service that had recruited him had always planned for his eventual disposal. The kill team en route wasn't just there to eliminate witnesses. They were there to eliminate the liability he represented. Sarah could see the moment when his operational mindset shifted from enemy asset back to American soldier, recognizing that his only chance for survival lay in cooperation with the people he had betrayed. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah's response came with the precision of someone who had planned for this contingency. "From the beginning of her mission, we use your scheduled communication window to feed disinformation to your handlers, convincing them that the counterintelligence investigation has been contained and that you remain uncompromised. Meanwhile, the intelligence you provide about Their operational structure allows us to roll up their entire network and protect the assets you've endangered. She manipulated the Sabre unit's interface, displaying a real-time map that showed the approaching kill team's position and the countermeasures already being deployed. The next few minutes would be remembered by everyone present as a masterclass in crisis resolution under impossible circumstances. Harrison, faced with the choice between certain death at the hands of his former handlers and uncertain mercy from the military justice system, made the decision that would save not just his own life, but the lives of American operatives in 6 different countries. He provided Sarah with the communication codes, meeting schedules, and operational parameters that allowed her to execute a deception operation of stunning complexity. Using the Sabre unit's advanced capabilities, she began transmitting carefully crafted disinformation that convinced Harrison's handlers that the security investigation had been successfully misdirected and that their asset remained in place and productive. Meanwhile, the intelligence Harrison provided about his handler's operational structure allowed DIA assets positioned throughout the region to begin simultaneously rolling up a network that had been operating undetected for more than 2 years. The kill team that had been dispatched to eliminate everyone in the conference room found themselves driving into a carefully prepared ambush that resulted in their capture rather than the massacre they had been sent to execute. Sarah Chen stood in the same conference room where her cover had been blown just 6 hours earlier, but now she wore the uniform that reflected her true identity as a senior case officer with the Defense Intelligence Agency. The Sabre unit that had started everything sat on the conference table, its LED indicators dark now that the crisis had passed. Colonel Matthews, reviewing the after-action reports that would document one of the most successful counterintelligence operations in recent military history, looked up at the woman whose split-second decision had prevented a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. "Officer Chen, I have to ask, was any of this according to plan?" Sarah's smile carried the weight of someone who had spent years preparing for moments like this, but also the relief of someone who had seen the best possible outcome emerge from an impossible situation. "Sir, operational planning can account for many contingencies, but it can never fully predict the moment when someone chooses to be better than their worst decision. The operation would be written in classified reports that few would ever read, but its impact would be felt across the American intelligence community for years to come, demonstrating that even in the shadowy world of espionage, there remains space for redemption and courage."